Bashar al-Assad is more or less alive and found himself in Russia, reportedly. Let us look back at the historical parallels with Ukraine in terms of Assad's regime fall and even try to see perspectives for Ukraine. Another topic is also quite obvious. Trump, Macron and Zelensky meet in Paris. Is the aftermath even somewhat predictable? And an interview with Andreas Umland, political researcher and analyst at the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies. Good afternoon, my name is Henry Keane and we are UATV English, an English-speaking Ukrainian state media source in persuasion to deliver hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. The world now knows the colors of Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad's parachute, the Russian tricolor. Reportedly, allegedly, and all other English synonyms to a word maybe, Bashar al-Assad is safe and sound in Russia. We can't confirm otherwise other than trusting Russian media, and that is a bad source of bad water even on a bad day, so let us avoid using that. Instead, let us call Bashar al-Assad Bashar al-Schrödinger, a political corpse that might be or might be not physically dead. However, this way or the other, without a doubt, Assad's flight to Moscow following the swift collapse of his regime, and as was previously falsely reported also for his private jet, means more than just the loss of a client state for the Kremlin. The fall of the House of Assad deals a major blow to Russian dictator Vladimir Putin's aspirations as a Middle East power broker and raises new questions about how fragile his own regime is.
Putin has thrown Assad under the bus to prolong his war in Ukraine. His resources are scarce and he is not as strong as he pretends. Former Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba.
Assad's swift departure raises some striking historical parallels. Assad now joins a one-time Ukrainian counterpart in exile. Former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych fled Ukraine for Russia in 2014 after weeks of street protests that culminated in a bloody crackdown. We in Ukraine call it Maidan. Syrians are now roaming through Assad's abandoned presidential palace in Damascus, much as Ukrainians once were able to visit the grounds of Bashar, and they're able to do it now, the incredibly garish estate once occupied by Yanukovych. Bashar was later refashioned as a museum of corruption. Yanukovych has not returned to Ukraine since his ouster, even though Russia occupied more than 20% of Ukrainian territory. As Yanukovych knows exactly what awaits for him here in Ukraine, a prison. Unlike Yanukovych, who ran away from his people to Russia, or Assad, whose forces simply surrendered Damascus without any fight at all, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held fast as Russian troops approached Kiev. And yes, say all you want, back then it was a matter of personal valor, just as well as national one. Remember Afghan President Ashraf Ghani, who was also, just as Zelensky, backed by the United States? He did waver and Afghanistan fell to the Taliban in 2021. Assad's flight from Syria was more than a moment for Ukrainians to revel in a symbolic setback for Putin. The Syrian regime crumbled exactly at the moment when Zelensky was in France to meet with President Emmanuel Macron and US President-elect Donald Trump ahead of the reopening ceremony at Notre-Dame de Paris Cathedral, where the Ukrainian leader received a standing ovation. The implosion of Assad's regime could potentially weaken Putin's hand in negotiations over ending the war in Ukraine, particularly if Putin's bellicose threats in recent weeks of nuclear escalation are perceived as what they actually are: hollow. Nearly 3 years into the war, these threats of Russian dictator have assumed a familiar rhythm. Each time Ukraine makes a request, asking for tanks, then fighter jet, then cluster munitions, then long-range weapons, our allies agonized over whether to grant it, fearing it would escalate the conflict and provoke a Russian response. And each time, when the West finally accepted Ukraine's requests, Russia's most catastrophic threats just did not materialize. What once was a Russian roulette, Putin turned into Russian taboo. What is taboo for the Kremlin 1 week becomes normal the next. Zelensky and European leaders, and me, just a little bit, have been concerned that Trump, who takes office next month, already could withdraw US military aid to Ukraine at a crucial juncture in Kyiv's battle to repel Russian illicit invasion of Ukraine. The Ukrainian president said the trilateral meeting was good and productive and that the three leaders agreed to continue working together.
Well, first of all, I want to thank President Emmanuel Macron for organizing this meeting. And our meeting is an important meeting. It is a very good meeting. It is important that it is constructive. We are talking about Ukraine. Of course, only about Ukraine and Ukrainians and how to support them, who have withstood all this invasion of Russian aggression and the fact that we all want peace. But it is very important for us, and this is our position, that the peace be fair for all of us, and that Russia, Putin, or any other aggressor should not have the opportunity to return. And this is the most important thing: a just peace and security guarantees. Strong security guarantees for Ukraine. And we agreed that we will continue to work in this direction. Today, in the process of discussing various issues, we have to work more and meet more. Our teams will also work. This is important. It is too early to talk about anything yet, but Ukraine's position is clear. It is very important that our partners know our positions from us, not from someone else. Without Ukraine, this peace, this just peace, any agreements are impossible. Our partners hear this, and I am very glad that they accept all this.
Zelensky arrived at the French presidential palace around 45 minutes after Trump did. The French presidential office said the three-way meeting was proposed by Macron and arranged shortly before Trump's arrival. Trump has pledged to end the war in Ukraine swiftly, but has not yet specified how exactly, raising concerns in Kyiv about what terms may be laid out of any future negotiations. Trump was invited as the president-elect of a friendly nation, Macron's office said, adding that this is no ways exceptional. We've done it before. The red carpet treatment, however, was a sign of how eager both Macron and other European leaders are to win Trump's favor and placate him even before he takes office. Worth noting that Macron was one of the first global leaders to congratulate Trump last month after the election. When he accepted the invitation to travel to Paris, Trump said Macron had done a wonderful job ensuring that Notre Dame has been restored to its full level of glory, and even more so. In an effort to build trust with the incoming U.S. administration, Zelensky's top aide, Andriy Yermak, met key members of Trump's team on a two-day trip earlier this week. I quote France 24 now. A senior Ukrainian official who spoke on condition of anonymity, as he was not authorized to speak publicly, described the meeting as productive, but declined to disclose any details. Well, what I can do is also publicly guarantees that how exactly productive the outcome of those meetings in France will become reality for Ukraine, there's little doubt that the whole world will surely have a chance to find it out on its own very soon. Andreas Umland, political researcher, analyst at the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies, is with us tonight. Hello, Mr. Umland.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure indeed. So much is happening in the world. Bashar al-Assad, sorry, but I need to ask, a political corpse, physically and reportedly alive now. If he's alive, can the Kremlin even try to restore him in power? What do you think?
My feeling is that this is now a gone thing, and I can't imagine how they will bring back their presence there. And it's quite embarrassing, not just for Putin personally, but this Assad regime, also his father's regime, they have been clients not just of the post-Soviet Russian Federation, but also already of the Soviet Union. So this is a quite historic loss for Moscow, not just for Russia, but also for Soviet Russia.
How come? Because how Assad's regime fall has weakened Putin's regime? I've heard that before, but how come, actually?
That's a good question. I'm not that much of a regional expert, but in general, I think these sort of regimes, they usually fall at some point, and then quite spectacularly.
True.
This is, I would say, a structural problem that such authoritarian regimes have, that they do not have the instruments to interact with society properly, and then
Absolutely.
the tensions between the regime and society rise, and then eventually the regime collapses.
All right, well, let's hope that two dictatorial regime connected also will just collapse together. Why not? That will be a fine holiday for all of us in Europe. By the way, talking about Europe and America united, somewhat united, trilateral meeting in Paris of Zelensky, Trump and Macron. Notre Dame de Paris reopening and all that, very fancy. And some even say game-changing. Do you see any positive signs for Ukraine yet, solely of the bare facts of that meeting? What the parties have so far after it said in the media, I mean?
I wouldn't call it game-changing, but it was certainly good that Zelensky was there and communicated with Trump, and that Macron was part of it.
Right.
Whether this will then have really the results that Ukraine is hoping for is another question. But so far, it doesn't look too bad. Let's see what will come out of it. I mean, the signs so far are good, but with Trump, one never knows, of course.
Well, indeed. Trump walking and Trump talking are two different personalities, which turns out somehow not too bad for Ukraine. So Trump says now, I know Vladimir Putin well. It is his time to act if he wants to stop this war. We all know that Vladimir Putin not only does not want to stop this war, but surely would love to start a couple of wars, more wars if he can, with Assad's regime down and Trump's rhetoric and Europe rising. Do you believe Putin will actually stop and sit at the table to negotiate at some point?
Yes, if Trump makes his sort of veiled threats true and actually plausibly says that he's going to increase the support for Ukraine, I think then there would be a motivation for Russia to get down to negotiations. The problem here is what is then going to be the deal, and obviously Trump wants to get a deal, but if that is then a deal where both Ukraine and international law will be at a loss, that would be basically allowing Putin to harvest the fruits of his aggression. And that would be, of course, not just bad for Eastern Europe and for Ukraine, it would be actually very bad for the international order, because then other countries may want to try to do the same.
Right.
So
Sure.
This is going to be far more complicated, I think, than many people imagine.
Absolutely. But if Putin the First, doesn't react to what Trump does and takes all Trump's efforts for granted, which he actually does now. And it's like insulting, while Trump said it many times publicly, if Putin does not. So if Putin does so, neglecting him, so he would give Ukraine all it needs to turn the tide of this war. So my question is, will Trump actually do it? Give all the military aid and all the money that we need to turn the tide of this war?
That's a good question. I guess somebody in Washington would perhaps better be qualified. Although with Trump, one never knows. I think, this is he's, at least to me, he's unpredictable in his actions. And in a way, that would be, if he would indeed give Ukraine everything it needs, the best scenario, because then Ukraine could presumably fully recover and liberate the territories it has lost. And it would be not just the best solution for Ukraine, it would be also the best solution for the international order and international law.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. Amen to that 3 times. And again, your expertise was absolute. Thank you so very much. We're waiting. What will Trump do? And then we can talk about that again very soon, just by the way.
Would be happy to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Goodbye. Andreas Umland, political researcher, analyst at the Stockholm Center for Eastern European Studies, was with us at UATV English. Well, that will be all for today. Thank you so very much for your time. My name is Henry Keane, and we are UATV English, an English-speaking Ukrainian state media source in always a persuasion to deliver hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Please do not shy to like, share, and subscribe and comment. Your voice matters indeed, as it in turn helps Ukrainian voice to be spread globally. So stay safe and tuned at UATV English for more already tomorrow. Goodbye.